Welcome back to the channel. I'm Professor Will, your Director of Training here at Centurion Holdings, and today we're going to go one more episode on our conversation series. Today I've got a friend of mine who I really brought in for a specific reason. We'll get to that in a minute, but he has an extensive law enforcement background. I'll let him get into some of that stuff. When he retired as a captain for a local sheriff's office in charge of their operations division. He's been a street cop. He's been a firearms instructor. He's been a defensive tactics instructor. He's actually the lead firearms instructor for the local academy. He was actually one of the individuals responsible for rewriting our academy firearms program from the ground up, revamped the whole thing, and it's fantastic. And that is what our conversation is about tonight. Tonight, we're going to see what happens after a shooting. All kinds of videos you can find online and all kinds of classes that go to teach you how to shoot, when to shoot, what to shoot, where to shoot. But nobody really goes into, what do I do afterwards? Who do I talk to? Who do I not talk to? What do I say? What do I not say? What actions and what steps should I take after I've been involved in a self-defense shooting? That's our conversation for tonight. Our guest tonight is Captain Retired Kevin Schmitt. Check it out. All right, here we are with Captain Schmitt, retired. Kevin, give us just a quick rundown on your background. I know that thing's about as long as your arm for what you've done.
I'm trying to summarize it as much as possible. The older I get, I find the least important I really ever was. I was in law enforcement for 38 years, 29 years full time. After I retired, which was 10 years ago, I stayed on part time, and I do mostly just training with firearms tactics, defensive tactics, and whatnot. In my retirement, I started my own business, JKS Training and Consulting, where I do firearms training for civilian and law enforcement, and I also do stuff like concealed carry classes and consulting of things of that nature.
Okay, so during your time with law enforcement, I know that we took the patrol rifle instructor school together. You were the instructor when I went through pistol firearms instructor school, and you also teach SWAT, correct? You're still teaching SWAT?
I haven't taught SWAT,
okay.
And I have. I taught it I think 2 years ago, and then I took some time off for about a year, so I didn't teach it last year, and I don't know if I'm going to continue to do that or not. If they ask me to, I'll be glad to help. But yeah, I taught most all of the basic SWAT schools for the last
Speaking of which,
years.
I know I'm supposed to be a trained observer. Did you cut your hair?
I did.
Oh my God, Tactical Jesus is no more. Is this the announcement of no more Tactical Jesus?
It is the first time that I've been on any platform. So it hasn't been on Facebook. I've been there in public, of course, but this happened about 2 weeks ago. And everybody wanted you. The first thing they wanted to know. First of all, rarely do the guys ever notice it, but women, my wife's friends, they would notice it. But anyway, they wanted to know why. After 10 years, I felt like that was enough. I retired at 50. If I still had hair at 50, I was going to grow it. I did. I kept it for 10 years. But we were bear hunting, and we bait a bear up behind a nice house that we didn't have permission to be, so we couldn't go in and just and kill it. But we had to go catch the dogs off of it. And somebody asked me, my cousin called me on the radio, and he said, "Can you go back to that house and ask that man if we can go in there and pull them dogs off?" And I looked around and realized out of a bunch of bear hunters, I was as scroungy as looking one. So I realized that the first impressions do mean a lot. So I cut it. So it's gone.
Gotcha. Wow, man. Can't believe it took me 30 minutes to
well, you're a guy. You're not supposed to notice things like that.
I was just going to make a comment about, we always refer to you as Tactical Jesus. And
yeah.
By the way, all of that's staying in. I ain't cutting any of that out. So
do it. Okay.
Our point for tonight, though, is that you've got a lot of experience. There's a lot of training backed up in what you say. You're probably nothing. You are the leading expert for like our firearms and tactics in this area. You rewrote the book literally on what we do in the firearms training class for the academy, both the LE and the jail side. You revolutionized a lot of the tactical training on the SWAT side of it with some of the stuff you brought back from the schools that you had gone to. there's a lot of experience and understanding and wisdom under your belt. And I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to get across to the people watching is, you're not just some regular patrol guy. Not there's anything wrong with just patrol people, but there's a lot of stuff that you've done that extends beyond that.
Well, the thing that I tell people I think when you're instructing or educating people on any topic, the first thing you've got to do is, especially you have to prove your credibility. And most of what I teach I speak in layman's terms. You'll probably find that out as we go on. I don't really retain catchphrases very well. I never have. So a lot of times when you go off to these industry leader schools and you learn catchphrases, but the information itself was common sense based on someone else's personal experiences. So most of what I teach is based off of actual experience, not in theory. I didn't read it in a book. Most of it it's evolved over the last 25 to 30 years, but the crux of it is based on experience that are gleaned from doing the job and actually being involved in some very tense situations. So it's based off experience and not theory. So that's one of the things that I hope that people get from my classes and when I do teach is that it's not full of catchphrases and cliches. It's sometimes I talk in terms of doodads and things.
Whatnots.
Yeah, because I don't know catchphrases because I didn't learn that way. I learned by trial and error in some cases and or trial by fire in a lot of cases. So.
I know we did the Red Dot Instructor School together 5-6 years ago, something like that, somewhere back there with the Vigor Training. Phil was a fantastic class. And I remember one of the first things he asked was experiences people had. And your comment to him was, well, I'm largely self-taught. And I think a lot of what we were learning jived what you had already been trying and testing out on your personal range. And it kind of fit in with, okay, and some of the things I think he showed us a better way to do it, but I think a lot of what he had taught you had already had that personal experience with.
Well, one of the things that I do glean from schools, when I do get to go to these schools and speak with, and I still talk to Phil today, if I find an instructor that I trust and that I think is a wealth of knowledge, then I will pick his brain as long as he will listen to my dumb questions. But one of the things that I got from that class was, yes, I was self-taught in Red Dot, but I'm not saying that I'm perfect now, but I perfected it in those 2 days with him because he taught me, whereas one of the things that he said in his class was if you have a theory, then test it with a timer. And I had dabbled in that. So I had, when we get older, I don't know if you've experienced this, but our eyesight is not what it used to be. So seeing both a front sight and a rear sight became a challenge, especially seeing it crystal clear, which with a open sight pistol, you're sight focused, not target focused. So when you're trying to be sight focused, especially for precise shooting, you can't see the front sight. So I had switched over to a Red Dot before I'd been to the school and and on the timer, I was still faster with an open sight. Well, through practice, I got faster with the dot. Well, after the school, it almost doubled my time.
Wow.
So now I had become truly target focused, and so much so that when I shoot open sights or irons now, it's almost a cognitive action to actually try to find a sight.
To find a sight.
And of course, when we teach in law enforcement, most everybody's still on the iron sight. So when we're testing a gun or showing a student something, we have to be able to do that. And it can become challenging. I recently went back to work part-time for an agency, and I had to qualify with both my on-duty gun and my off-duty gun, and both are equipped with dots. Well, the first one, and I hadn't shot in a while, and it's, as you know, it's a skill that deteriorates quickly if you don't practice it. And I hadn't shot anything other than game animals with a pistol. I hadn't done any training really for almost a year. So I went in and I said, I might not shoot a perfect score, which I pride myself. I'm not, those scores are great and all, but it's just a measurement of your training. It's not training. And so I was really afraid that I wasn't going to shoot perfect. Well, the gun got my 100, everything was fine and good. When I went to shoot with my second gun, the red dot went out. I had never shot this gun at all, ever. The day I bought it, I put a dot on it. Well, I'm a stickler for rules, and the rules are that we're not going to call time out so I can fix my sight and finish this test. So I shot the whole course with no dot.
Wow. Just inside the window.
Just inside the window, and I don't have suppressor height sights on it, so I can vaguely see the very tip top of that front sight. It was still 100, and it was a tighter group than the first.
Wow.
But I think that was because I had just shot 50 rounds, so the next 50, the trigger started to feel familiar again. Right. So that's, but I learned quite a bit at that red dot school on how to perfect the act of shooting with a red dot. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is they go out and they buy a red dot and then they say, well, I don't like a red dot now because I can't find it. I'm always searching for it. And there's a technique and there are drills. And that's one thing I learned from field. And I had a student that came to my private class that had failed out of the police academy. And her agency was going to let her go. And she convinced them to let her stay and go back to the next academy if she would take personal private lessons. She came to me and I told her that I said, you technically you don't work in law enforcement right now. So I didn't give her the discount or nothing. I just told her, I said, you got to pay for this. And she said, that's fine. She said, because my agency said, if I go back to the academy and I pass, then they will reimburse me for the training. I said, good enough. She came for 3 days. Now, part of it was building up her body to be strong enough to do it better. Not saying that you have to be a weightlifter or a bodybuilder, but strength helps everything.
Right.
So I gave her some exercises, and she religiously done them at home. We didn't do it there. She done them. I said, this is what I want you to do at home. I called Phil. I said, she's got a really bad habit of X, Y, and Z. And he said, this drill, do you remember that drill? I said, yeah. He said, that drill breaks that habit. He said, do you remember that drill? I said, yeah. He said, that drill is designed to break that. So very specific drills break very specific habits. Said all that to say this. She went back to the academy and she was vying for Top Gun.
Nice.
She failed out so bad that her agency said there was no way she could pass this. And she never shot below a 95 all week long, the whole 8 days, shot several hundreds. And at the very end, she was shooting 98, 99s on those last 3 days.
Right.
95s and 98s, 90s.
On the score ones that count.
The ones that counted, she was in the high 90s, but she didn't get 100 on any of those, I don't think. So she didn't get Top Gun, but she was like top 3 in the class.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And all she did was 3 training sessions. Very specific drills to break her very specific bad habits.
Because you knew what you needed to do. And that brings me to one of the things I wanted to talk about. You made the 2-word statement earlier that really stuck with me, and I wanted to circle back to that. Personal experience. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to go into details here, but I know that at one point in your career, you were involved in an officer-involved shooting while on duty.
Yes.
And so you may be... I know my friend Brent in North Carolina, he was involved in a shooting when he was a police officer in San Jose, California. And you guys may be the only 2 that I personally know that have actually been involved in an on-duty shooting. So for me, that makes you my subject matter expert. What happens, not just for law enforcement, but especially for civilians, the guys watching, the people that come to your class, what is the first thing they should do if they've had to shoot somebody to defend themselves?
Well, so there is a world of difference between law enforcement, officer-involved shootings and civilian-involved shootings. If it's an officer-involved shooting, you have a duty to render aid. So if you're involved in an officer-involved shooting on duty or as a police officer, even off duty, if you're a sworn police officer and you're going to lean back on your department's qualifications, your department's even though it was off duty, that's where your concealed carry comes from. You're still basically on duty when it happened. So you have a duty to render aid. So at that point, you're going to dial 911, get medical professionals en route. If you have a phone, you're going to, or direct someone else to, and then you're going to start to render whatever first aid is Now, that being said, you got to first scan and make sure there's not an additional threat first, of course. But so things are different there. If it's an office-involved shooting, I would tell anyone, whether you're a police officer or a civilian, before you make any official statements, take a moment and gather your thoughts. Call your attorney, whatever you need to buy enough time, because there are countless studies, and I can't just sit here and name them off and regurgitate those studies, but there are countless studies out there that show that under duress, this is a traumatic incident.
Right.
You can only imagine. Under duress, what you perceive to be a fact may in fact not be true. The brain will play tricks on you under duress. I've been involved with some tactical operations where there were bodies left. And I remember being debriefed, and I remember one incident that there was a child involved, and the child was of the same age as one of my TAC members, the sniper. And I had sent him upstairs to get eyes from above on a location because the shooter had not been located. And there was a deceased child. And I remember in the debriefing, he kept saying that there were two. Well, there wasn't. There was only one. The only thing that I could even imagine is that he had a son that age. And I'm just wondering, and I'm no psychiatrist, I'm not playing doctor here, but I just wonder, why did he see two when there was only one? And so the mind plays tricks. It was traumatic, what we saw that day. So anyway, it's not an admission of guilt. It should not even imply that any wrongdoing on a civilian's part or on an officer's part. Take the time to collect your thoughts, to make sure your brain saw what it thinks it saw or heard what it thinks it heard. I've been in operations where there were shots fired, and some of the team never heard a shot, and the rest of us, your ears are ringing. How could you not know this? So I remember calling for rescue one time where someone took their own life, and I immediately got on the radio, and everybody was baffled as to why. And he had shot himself in front of us. And it was only two of us in the room when he did it, and no one else out in the hallway heard a shot.
Oh, wow.
So, that's the kind of tricks that the mind can play.
Right.
So take the time, gather your thoughts, call your attorney, whatever the case may be, before you give an official statement. That's what I would tell anybody. And it's not to come up with a story. It's to make sure the story you tell is an accurate one. In the civilian world, what I tell people is the exact opposite. Get out of there. You and I both know, being in law enforcement, a lot of times in a homicide situation, the death of someone, friends and family show up before we can get there.
Right.
So the last thing you want to be as a civilian, you just been involved in a shooting, someone attacks you, you defend yourself, that person is down. The last thing you want is friends and family to show up and have you outnumbered, because they will never see it your way.
Correct, yeah.
So I tell my students to leave. Go to the nearest, safest location, wherever that be. And I tell them, I often say, if you were involved in a shooting in Lynchburg, don't drive all the way to Roanoke.
Right.
But go to a public area, well-lit area, call 911, let them know first and foremost that you have been a victim. You shot someone, or you were involved in this shooting because you were the victim of an attack, hopefully, and then you shot someone out of legitimate fear, not anger or rage.
Right.
I've often said that if you shoot someone in anger, it's probably murder, and if you shoot someone in legitimate fear, it's probably self-defense. Give the details to the dispatcher. The dispatcher is trained to ask very specific questions. They are not there to get involved in the investigation.
Right.
They are trained to ask very specific questions. Where did it happen? Where are you now? Where's the weapon now? Things of that nature. I said, they will keep you on the phone until law enforcement gets there. They'll tell you what to do with the gun, and they will relay that information to the officer. I said, when the officer gets there, make sure that your hands are empty. No cell phone, no nothing. Put the phone down, put it on speakerphone if that's what you need to do to stay in touch with the dispatch. But keep your hands empty and do whatever the officer says do, and make sure that the gun is put away and that dispatch has already relayed that information to them. But get out of there, leave, because you don't want to be there if you can, and you may not be able to. And if it happens in your home, then it may not be able to. But maybe go to a room, lock yourself in, distance yourself. But a civilian doesn't have that responsibility. Now, a lot of your agencies or associations, such as USCCA or US Law Shield and things of that nature, both great organizations. I've talked to some representatives of both. And if you read their literature, I think one of their first thing is to call your attorney first. I don't know that that's, even though someone has attacked you, I would still like to get out of that area and get aid to them. I mean, I don't want them, if there's a chance that they can be saved, then, I would want that. And I know that once you call 911, they're going to try to keep you on the phone, but nothing says that you don't have to get off the phone so you can call your attorney. And I think these organizations will have an attorney en route to you before law enforcement even gets out. I'll let you leave.
Gotcha.
So that's my advice after a shooting, is just take some time before you make a statement.
And the phones for most dispatch centers are recorded usually, so everything you're telling that person and the questions they're asking, the answers you're giving, is also going to be part of that storyline once we hit. It
could be, and I've had some dispatchers in my concealed carry classes, and that's why I kind of know what they ask, and I've asked them, what do y'all get into? And they would get into detail. We just have a list of questions, and she said, we really don't get into the investigative part. We don't really ask why there was a shooting or whatnot.
I got a lot of training on that when Melissa and I first started dating. She was a dispatcher. I'd been dispatcher for a county down in Southwest Virginia, and then was dispatcher here for the local city police for several years. And she had that same issue with the stabbing death, that she was the one that took the phone call for and had to go to court and testify as that this is what the person called and said. And when I asked, and I didn't know any of that until she showed me all that stuff and said, I've got to ask this, I got to ask this. And that blew my mind that they had that much forethought to put that in
very well. And I guess another thing is, if they are acting on behalf of law enforcement, if they're in a fact-finding mission, then they're acting on behalf of law enforcement. Then the Miranda warnings come into play there. It's not just a voluntary utterance anymore. So I don't think it's probably got something to do with that they don't really get into asking detailed questions. So they just factual questions. Like we would want to know, where's the gun?
Right.
Where's the body? Where are you? And where's the gun?
Especially where's that weapon? And like you said, smartest idea, when you see those lights and hear that siren, put that thing somewhere. I'm assuming you want them to put it somewhere where it's visible, top of the car, on the hood.
I don't really care.
Get away from it.
As long as it's not, as long as they're not holding.
As long as you're not standing going, here it is.
And I get it. In my class, I tell people, a lot of officers are as scared of a gun as I am a snake. I am not one of those people that I don't really. A gun has never scared me. You can be wearing it. I don't care. But some officers are, and you never know which officer you're going to get that night or that day, or so. For that reason, just don't be holding it.
But I can promise you this: there's a snake around that I've got a gun on. You're going to know it because you're going to hear the shots. I don't do snakes, man.
Me and you both. But anyway, that would be my advice on the immediate after.
Just not have it in your hands, like you said. Have nothing in your hands. No cell phone. No wallet. Nothing in there, so they can plainly see all 10 digits, and that way there's no mistaking. I'm assuming your next thing would be to tell them to do what that officer says when he comes in, because he's rolling in hot. He's rolling in. He's got an excitement level, and his adrenaline's kind of up because he's coming to a shooting.
Right.
I mean, possibly a killing, whether they're going to call it homicide or justified, it doesn't matter. But he's coming in, so he's already at a certain level of tension himself.
Right.
And you and I both know, we've been cops a long time, and you hit every situation. No matter how well trained you are, you're still reminding yourself, okay, breathe, relax. You're human.
And also, what you got to understand from an officer standpoint is you don't know how well the victim here handles stress.
Right.
So they could be hysterical. They may not be listening to the dispatcher. So you got to take the last thing I would want to do, and you've seen it happen on TV. You watch the news, and I do study the news a lot about these little incidents and play Monday morning quarterback, and use it for training purposes. How could we have done that better? But you see a lot of times where officers actually pull up and shoot the caller because of a misunderstanding. And the caller is obviously going to be upset, possibly hysterical. They're going through a life-changing moment. I mean, they were just attacked, then they went on the defensive, and
you got trauma on top of trauma.
Exactly. So
about the time we're getting there is when they start realizing that, oh my Lord, what have I just done?
Yep.
And that gravity of it is starting to hit them. So what happens now? What can a civilian expect? What do you teach them in your classes when they also get there? You're going to deal with your attorney. You're going to deal with the officer. You've given your statement. Over the next several weeks, months, because some of these things, especially if there's lawsuits involved, they can stretch out years. Yes. What kind of thing can they expect in that kind of like couple days immediate aftermath?
So, and I know that I have an opinion on this, and it's based off of being a police officer and dealing with people in this situation, being involved in a shooting in these situations. But I also understand that perhaps a defense attorney may have a totally different opinion than I'm going to give you of mine. The shooting that I was in, I didn't immediately lawyer up. I was not a member of the PBA, so I didn't go calling my PBA rep. I felt so strongly that what I had done, there was nothing else that could be done, that I gave a statement. Now, we just talked about why that may not have been a good idea for all.
Again, that's personal experience.
So, you're gonna, right after this, understand that if you're involved in a lethal encounter, that there's going to be an investigation. There is a possibility that you may be arrested that night. What you deem as justified homicide or excusable homicide, and there's a definition for each. Justified homicide, first of all, the word homicide just means death of one person at the hands of another person. It does not mean murder. So,
gotcha.
So justifiable homicide is when you are at no fault whatsoever. You are a victim of a random attack. There was no history there. There was no back and forth. There was no tit for tat. Random attack. You were in fear for your life, ability, opportunity, jeopardy, the concept of reasonable man, all of that was met, usually the force. Excusable homicide is when you're someone at fault. There was some back and forth, tit for tat. There was an argument, there was a fight, there was some fingers exchanged, there was some curse words exchanged, and all of a sudden, someone's willing to take this the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And you realize, oh my God, this is turning into a lethal encounter. At that point, because there was some back and forth, now you have to back up and say, now you do have a duty to retreat. You have a duty to announce a desire for peace. And if you have to kill, it's only because you've retreated as far as you can, announce that desire for peace, and it's because it was the last resort. So those are the two self-defense type of shootings. So either way, there's going to be an investigation. You may be arrested that night. Even if you're not, you may, once the facts are presented to the Commonwealth Attorney, you may be indicted later. Even if the law enforcement, Commonwealth Attorney, all deem that it's justified, whichever route that went, it was justified, it was self-defense, you're good, there could be a civil case. Everybody wants that dollar. So Joe Bob that you had to shoot for threatening to beat you in the head with a tire tool, his family is they could sue you.
Right.
No, they got proved damages, and that of course they've lost a loved one, and so they've got to prove that that you were the one in the wrong. Even so, you're going to have to hire an attorney for that, and that attorney's going to cost a heck of a lot of money. And that's why, like I said, I've spoken with representatives from both USCCA and US Law Shield, great organizations. I don't sell anything for either one. They both wanted to partner with me, come speak to my classes. I let one of them do it one time, not as a partnership, just as a public service announcement, and everybody got up and left. I mean, nobody wanted to hear it. I guess it wasn't the proper venue.
Right.
They were there to get the concealed carry permit, and as soon as I was finished, if I'd have let him do it during break, which I don't know, maybe that would have been different. But those organizations, you pay a monthly fee or an annual fee, whatever the case may be. So that attorney is part of the membership. So that may be the best route to go. But it's luck of the draw as to which attorney you get. It has to be a participating attorney with that organization. Now, the good thing is, most of their attorneys, well, all of their attorneys, so they claim, are trained in handling these specific types of cases. So that may be a plus. The attorney that you like and you've used to close on your house and things of this nature may not be the best defense attorney or civil attorney in a civil suit. But it's going to cost a lot of money if you're not a part of one of these organizations. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is that there may be retaliation, and not that you're going to put a whole lot of thought into that. If you have to use self-defense,
right.
I mean, a lethal force to defend yourself, you're not really going to think about that. But as an afterthought, who was his friends and family? Who were his relatives? Are you going to look over your shoulder for a long, long time? Because there will be threats and a lot of mouth going on there. So that's something else that you're going to have to take into just a small part of something to think about what's going to happen afterwards.
Gotcha. Is there anybody specifically you should avoid speaking to?
I would just avoid speaking to anyone that I don't have to, because again, what you say can be used against you, not only to the officers, but if you say anything and someone records it, there's cameras everywhere. So, and it's all recorded. And a lot of times what just comes out of your mouth may not, imagine, if you will, what's going on in you at that moment. And what you say, it may be something totally out of character for you, but it's either going to be remembered or recorded somewhere by someone. So,
and I would assume that would extend farther down the line. Don't get home and at the family barbecue next month start spouting off to everybody about what happened in your situation, because they're all going to ask.
You'll be surprised. A lot of people are scared to ask. They think that, and I ran into this too. First of all, if you don't want to talk about it, that's normal. If you can't stop talking about it, that's normal too. People deal with stress differently. If some people bottle it up and never speak of it again. Others, to deal with it, they got to get it out. They've got to talk about it. I was never afraid or ashamed to speak of it. And you've known me for years. I talk a lot. And for me, part of just dealing with it was talk about it. Now, the way I dealt with it was using it as a teachable moment. And I remember taking it almost immediately back to our attack team and saying, hey guys, this is what I learned. This is what I saw. And I would use it as a training advice or a tactic. I said, I noticed this worked, this didn't. It's amazing how much information that you can get out of a single incident. if you know what to look for. So either way, if you want to talk about it, that's okay. I do caution you about how you talk about it. I've talked to some officers who have been involved in shootings, very justifiable shootings, and they come across almost proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely nothing to be proud of. I mean, it's something that you had to do. I think I was happy that I had taken the time to train appropriately. That when the time came, that I was equipped to handle a situation of that magnitude. But again, if you ever run into these officers who are involved in a shooting and they're almost braggadocious over it, then it makes me think: are they mentally the right officer?
Right.
From here on out? But again, whether you talk about it or not is both, or it's normal. But if you don't have to talk about it, then don't. Out in public.
Okay. So we've got, take a moment to collect your thoughts. Of course, call your attorney, call law enforcement, tell them what happened, where you're at, put the weapon down before they get there, not when they get there. And then on the aftermath, just be prepared for the trauma upon trauma. You may get arrested, you may not, you may get sued, you may not. And that's the kind of stuff I don't think anybody can stand there and say, you will get this, you will get that.
Everything's going to happen is going to be based on individual experience, or individual occurrences or circumstances of that. So nothing is a cookie. It's not a cookie cutter thing, other than maybe what dispatch asked you. This is a slide, and I wrote this. It's one of the slides that I read in my class, and I come up with this talking to a friend. And it wasn't just one friend, but one friend really made me put this on paper. But you know this too. You've got friends who will tell you, just in conversation, you'll be at a party, and they'll get to telling you, I can tell you right now, if that happened to me, I'm going to kill an SOB.
Yeah.
So this is.
I see red.
So this is this is one of the slides that I make a point to really emphasize this in the class. No one should ever have a nonchalant attitude toward the use of deadly force. It is a very serious action that has permanent results and in some cases long-lasting consequences. However, if the threat is real and imminent, you cannot hesitate either. Only continued training can prepare you for making an accurate, fast decision on something so permanent.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
What I like to do is, when I see an incident on TV, Monday morning quarterbacking, you can train your brain to do the right thing. When things happen like that, it's a instinct more than a decision. You're not going to have time to sit and weigh pros and cons. It will be an instinct based on your training or lack thereof. So by the same token, you can also train your brain to do the wrong thing. So if you've convinced yourself, in talking to friends over a few beers, that you're going to kill someone over something stupid and or illegal,
right,
there's a high chance that you will kill someone over something stupid and illegal. And by illegal on your part.
Yeah.
So don't have that attitude. Train your brain to do the right legal thing.
The parking lot situation in Florida comes to mind. The guy was talking to the girl that was in the handicapped spot, telling her you shouldn't be there. First of all, he's not even a law enforcement officer, so you shouldn't be approaching anybody about where they're parked at. But, she called her boyfriend inside. He came out, shoved the guy pulled his pistol out and plugged him, killed him. And I remember watching that and seeing the look of shock on his face when the gun went off. He was actually surprised by it. And he kind of looked at it like, and I looked right at my wife and said, I guarantee you that guy's never done any challenge drills on the range. All he's ever done is pulled and shoot, pulled and shoot, pulled and shoot. And the moment that gun came out, that instinct took over and he shot the guy. He was lucky. They got an attorney, Commonwealth.
Was he found out again? Because he was charged.
He was the one. I think he was the one. They didn't even charge him. They called it
I remember
justifiable. But
there was one that I thought it was in Texas, but that particular incident the sheriff's office deemed it stand your ground. It was a stand your ground state, and they deemed it stand your ground. But when they showed the video, the guy had pushed him down. He drew the gun, and the guy that pushed him had turned and was actually shot in the back.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the prosecuting attorney said, no. It stopped being stand your ground when he's turned to walk away.
He
was charged, and I think that one was
may have been. I just remember that they originally deemed it as viable, and I remember looking at that going.
At first it was. At first the sheriff's office said stand your ground because it's a stand your ground state. Same thing happened in another place where a carload of youths pulled up with boom boom music going on. An older man says something to them. They all start threatening that we will get out and beat you, and a few curse words. And so he pulls his gun and starts shooting into the car. So at first it was stand your ground state, and at first they were saying it was stand your ground, because so you got the ability. You got multiple younger people versus one. You got the opportunity never presented itself because they never exited the car.
Right.
The jeopardy and jeopardy and intent can be. I like to use the word jeopardy because it's easier for me to explain to you why I felt jeopardized.
Makes sense.
But sometimes it does go into intent, because if you verbalize your intent, I will get out of this car and kill you. There's the intent. But in this case, because they never exited the car, there was never the opportunity.
Right.
He shot into the car. They start to pull away, and only one, there was a 17-year-old, was shot as the car left the parking lot. So he's saying self-defense. I just shot him before they got her, but he was charged and convicted, and that was based on the fact that the ability was there, the jeopardy was there, but the opportunity never was there. So it never. And you have the concept of the reasonable man. Would a reasonable person do this in this situation? Had they gotten out the car, I can see that. Another incident was and this was recently. They did a Netflix special, and one of my students told me about this. They just watched. I was using it as an example, and it was given. They told me they just seen a Netflix special about this. About the older lady who had told the kids to get out of her yard. The mom of those kids come over through the door, threatening, you open this door, I'm going to beat you to death. And she shot her through the door. There was a lot of news media on that over, the ability, opportunity, all that was there. But again, the opportunity never was there because the door was never
still had
open.
that barrier between
them. The concept of a regional man, a lot of regional people would say, why would I wait for her to open the door? Right. However, there was no opportunity to actually lay hands on if the door was never open. So,
what you're describing here now is basically they're in panic mode because they don't have enough training. And like I was talking about the guy in that first situation, all he'd ever done is pull that pistol and shot, and that's what he reverted to, just like you're talking about, that instinct. And the guy with the use. All he saw in his head was that image of them coming out, and his mistake was there's a very thin line, as you and I both know, between defense and assault. Mm-hmm. And you hit me and I hit you back once, maybe twice. I'm justified. I hit you, knock you down, get on top of you, and start UFCing you. I'm going to jail for assault. And I think they've missed the boat sometimes on where that line is at.
Again, it's the code sections in Virginia and across this country. They're not written in black and white. They're written in shades of gray.
Right.
It's always going to be left up to the interpretation of law enforcement, the prosecuting attorney, and the judge. And I also tell a lot of people say, well, my attorney says I can do this. Let me tell you about your attorney. Your attorney makes money when you get in trouble.
Yeah.
And I said, and when they don't get you out of trouble, then they say, oh, it's just a rigged system. I'm sorry, I did all I could. But they're going to still get their money.
Right.
If you want accurate, now a judge will never give you his opinion until you're standing in front of him, and that's the last place you want to be, is standing in front of the judge. If you want accurate information on what you can and cannot do, and a lot of my class, I ran through ran by the Commonwealth Attorney. The Commonwealth Attorney, he knows what he will prosecute and what he won't, what he will not. And he also knows what the judge, how he usually rules in certain things.
Right.
So if you want an accurate answer, contact your Commonwealth Attorney. Now, don't get into a bunch of hypotheticals. None of us, I don't like to speak in hypotheticals because every circumstance will be every situation will be measured by the totality of the circumstances. So everything is different. Every situation. I can't say that If it happens on this side of the line, you can use lethal force. If it happens on that side of the line, you can't. Because it's not black and white, it's shades of gray. So I do caution, I'm not one of these people who thinks that you should push the envelope. Know the laws, be so good at what you do training wise that if you have to do it, you can do it in a microsecond, the right thing in a microsecond. But no, that's.
I think that's the big key there. Training.
Yeah.
Get the right training. Get the right people to train. You and I have both done. I've done martial arts for a long, long time, and you did a lot of martial arts. Got a black belt with one of the local MMA schools, one of the first MMA schools in this area, and we've both seen people that just they had an idea of what I can fight, and then when that stuff hit, their fighting became the windmill of death or the fetal position on the ground as they got hammered. So you got to have proper training.
Yeah.
Because we have both seen, on the martial arts side of things, we've both seen local people that couldn't fight their way out of a wet paper bag, but they're going to show you all these neat things they do on YouTube and Facebook and all the other social media platforms. And if you go to that person, you're spending a lot of money, but you're not getting a lot of product. Firearms is the same way. I see some of these things online that I watch and I just go, ooh, that's going to get you in jail. And so you got to vet. I think that's one of the things Phil from Vigor said as well. One of the first things he said is, hey, has anybody checked out our website? And nobody had, and he admonished everybody. Goes, that's the mistake, first mistake you made. You don't know anything about me. I could be full of crap and you wouldn't know the difference. You got to vet those people that you're training with, but get that good training.
Yeah.
Good solid training.
I don't know if you've ever been to a school and within a few hours you realize that the instructor is full of it.
Yeah.
I've seen those. And you might find one thing that you can put to use, but the other thing about training is, unfortunately, there's some things that you just can't teach. And the 3 F's, fight, flight, or freeze. Right. Everybody's different. Some people, they ain't got no backup in them whatsoever. They'll fight. But here's the funny thing, this is what I teach about stance. Stance is not the most important of the fundamentals of shooting, because you may not ever shoot the same way in a gunfight twice. However, when you train, try to train from a chosen stance. And the stance that I choose is the fight, flight, or freeze stance. It's, if I'm going to fight, I'm going to plant my feet, square up and fight. If I'm going to flee, I'm going to plant my feet so I can push off and run. If you're going to freeze, it's going to look a lot like both of those. Just you're not going to do anything after. So if you're the type that just freezes, at least you got the stance down pat. But a lot of people, they don't know. They can train their whole life, and all of a sudden when they realize this is for real, and I guarantee you, in your martial arts training, and you've done some real fighting in the ring or on the streets, you may run into somebody who's really, really good at sparring, but as soon as this
fecal matter hits the oscillating object,
they just fall apart.
Yeah.
What did Mike Tyson say? Everybody's got a plan to get hit in the face.
Hit in the face. I agree. So get that training. Speaking of training, you have firearms training. You teach concealed weapons classes. You do some range stuff with people. What's that? That is
JKS Training and Consulting, and it's on Facebook. I don't do any other social media. That's the only place you'll find it on Facebook. JKS Training and Consulting. Or you can just look me up on Facebook, Capt Schmitt, and find out when my next classes are. I got one Saturday. That one is full. I'm trying to do them. I do not work at all during hunting season, so now that hunting season's over with, I'm trying to do them every Saturday that we got fair weather. So
you can get his classes from January until about October. From October to January, you ain't getting nothing because he's chasing deer and bear.
But yeah, I do that, and I do it a little differently. I do the concealed carry class is all classroom. It's 4 hours of classroom at a reduced price. I used to do it all together, and it was just a long day. And I just don't think people retain information very well. And I also didn't think for safety's sake I couldn't take somebody out to the range. And also, if you threw a bunch of people together, especially strangers, no one really learned anything. So I do it two different ways. All of the firearms training is optional for an additional fee. It all comes out to be about the same price, but it's two different training dates. And the firearms training itself is it's either one-on-one, where you can bring a friend, because everybody likes to have a friend with them and it's fun to do things. But it's individualized training, because everybody learns different speeds. So, and some people have already got their concealed carry permit, they don't need that. So I also offer just firearms training. So, and I strongly urge anyone, just because you've seen some videos learn how to shoot.
Yeah.
Learn how to fight with a pistol.
So JKS Training and Consulting LLC, find him on Facebook. You can find all of our stuff on all the social media platforms. I am on all of them. I don't know why I don't post anything but business stuff. You can see us at CenturionHoldingsLLC.net. You can get a hold of me for CenturionHoldingsLLC@gmail.com. You can check the QR code right there, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, brother.